Mimosas for brunch, happy hour, going for drinks with coworkers, dates at the bar, summer patio lunches, fairs, festivals, quarantinis, Uber alcohol, and an appearance in pretty much every TV show or movie you've ever seen. Hey guys, welcome back to my bedroom. Today we're going to be talking about our society's obsession with alcohol. Before I get into the video, I just want to say that people say that making YouTube videos is easy. They're wrong. I've filmed every video multiple times now to try and get it right, and it takes a lot of time. This is a project I've been working on for almost a year. I started working on this project in August of 2019, so it's finally here. That's exciting. Don't get me wrong, I like people like Stephen Colbert and the Try Guys and Seth Meyers, and I'm not calling them out for doing anything wrong. I just wanted to make a point that alcohol is so pervasive and acceptable in our society that we often don't even notice how consistently it shows up. We've all just become collectively normalized and comfortable with any kind of jokes made about alcohol or regular drinking. It's just been normalized in our lives. This normalcy and promotion of drinking is particularly puzzling in a society that also stigmatizes people who are struggling with addiction so heavily. We demonize and criminalize people who use less acceptable substances and yet very readily promote the use of the substance alcohol, which is still a mind-altering and behavior-altering substance. A lot of the promotion of alcohol boils down to profits and marketing, but it's hard to talk about the profits and marketing of alcohol without talking about the profits and marketing of the recovery industry as well. That's for a different video though. Too much to get into here. The prevalence of alcohol in our lives is inarguable. If you look tired or stressed, it's likely not going to be long before somebody around you suggests, hey, to have a drink, take a little bit off, or go have a glass of wine and relax. Alcohol has become our society's go-to coping mechanism. It's the thing that we immediately turn to shut off and relax and get away from the inanities of our current society and our current life. And I get it, there's a lot I want to shut off from. It's so acceptable to be drinking that some people in places actually condone drinking to excess and make light of overdosing or blacking out. You see this more often at places like frat parties or dance clubs where the environment is acceptable of substance use, but it does happen in other places. There's limited concern for rationality or responsibility at these kinds of events and places, and oftentimes it's these environments where blacking out becomes the butt of the joke. When discussing unsafe normalized drinking, it's hard to ignore how it's slid its way into the parenting culture as well. I'm not gonna shame anybody for their choices, but it's hard to argue that the mommy wine culture has taken on a toxic form of marketing and promotion. This vocal group of wine lovers have created their own sub-industry full of memes, products, and even events. It doesn't take a lot of searching to find products like socks or apron or glassware that have phrases like toddler's wine, so mommy wines, or mom juice, or this is mommy's bottle. Even near me, there are mom wine tasting events every year. It doesn't take a lot of searching to find these communities online, which strikes two main concerns for me. One is the rapid rate at which women who drink to excess is catching up to the rate at which men drink to excess, which never used to be on this kind of equal playing field in our society. The second is that alcohol affects men and women differently and at different rates of speed, and the repercussions of what that might look like if more women are drinking to excess. This isn't something that's often talked about. I will link some articles down in the description that kind of explain further what I'm talking about. A concern of trying to speak to these communities is the fierce backlash that might come from the perception of authoritarianism or anti-feminist. You know, how dare you try and tell women what they can and can't do? How dare you try and limit a mother's choices or question her parenting? These are deeply personal for women, and if you go in on one action that they might be doing, it's connected to the entirety of their motherhood. It's an incredibly precarious line to walk to try and balance the perspectives of the situation. Of course, not all mothers who drink have drinking problems, and I'm not saying that moms who drink are bad moms. But there's a problem when society collectively accepts this idea of wine moms and refuses education because of pride and pleasure. It's not an attack to suggest that a lot of these women are acting out of guilt, shame, or exhaustion, and possibly even fear or anger. For such an acceptable culture of wine moms, the tables sure do a 180-degree flip if she ever admits to having a problem of drinking. In this society, it's not seen as vulnerable and inspiring to admit you have a problem and ask for help. It turns into attention seeking or being a bad influence and a failed mother. And how challenging must it be for these women to even admit that they have a problem if their behaviors don't reflect the stereotyped appearance of what an alcoholic might look like? Is drinking a bottle of wine really an issue if I'm not drinking during the day? Do I actually have a problem if I'm not hiding bottles? That's what they show on TV as an alcoholic, right? How is anybody supposed to ask for help in an environment that looks like a badass, no fucks given person who's handling their crap to somebody who is struggling with a problem and is weak and needs help? How can anyone be expected to let go of that pride and that internal acceptance in a society that glamorizes and normalizes alcohol to begin with? I think an important question to ask is, where did this start? How did we get to this place as individuals where we fantasize about our legal birthday years before it even happens? I think it probably starts out younger than any of us even realize. Exposure to anything breeds curiosity, especially when it's inaccessible and we're told we're not allowed to have it. And the acceptance and prevalence of alcohol in our society means children are exposed at extremely young ages. We watch our friends drink beer at every cookout or sports event. Every holiday includes a toast of some kind. Sunday dinners mean a glass of wine or two at night. We've likely seen the first drunk adult in our lives by the age of 6, either at a wedding or a public event or on television. There are ads for beer, whiskey, and wine everywhere. This is why we grow up dreaming of the day that we can go to the bar legally, if we hadn't already been doing it for years anyways. How many of us had our first drink at age 15? Age 13? Age 10? How many of us grew up watching drinking be normalized by our parents or by television? Maybe even our parents offering us a sip or two when we were younger to taste what it was like. Alcohol is seen as a rite of passage in a lot of circles, and parents who are ignorant to the dangers of it are unequipped to properly educate and prepare their children. It's not the parents' fault, it's just a way that the industry has created this dependency and normalization of drinking. How are we supposed to expect children to grow up and have control over their choices instead of alcohol controlling them? Listen, I'm not anti-alcohol. I don't want to criminalize or demonize anyone's free choices, and I don't think that substance use in and of itself has a moral weight of good or bad. And I'm not judging anyone's coping mechanisms. In fact, like I said before, I still have substance dependencies that I'm working on. I don't think the solution is to shame and stigmatize people with substance use disorders. I agree with the idea that what is freedom if I'm not free to choose what goes into my body? But that ignores the responsibility that we have to each other to educate about the risks and consequences of those actions. If we want to be honest with children and protect them from harm, then we have to be honest about the things that are potentially able to harm them. I remember being taught in middle school that drugs were bad, but not really having the conversation about alcohol. And believe me, my parents never saw this coming. So what do we do about it? I don't have all of the solutions, but I have suggestions on where to start. I'm not a parent yet, but sans pandemic, I do work with children on a daily basis. I think it's our responsibility to do better in talking to them about these kinds of things. Not necessarily alcohol-related conversations, but conversations around adult behavior and the choices we make and the way that our brains work. We can use simple language with our kids when we're explaining things about addiction, in ways that'll be easier for them to understand. Saying something like, eating too many sweets will trick your brain into not being as happy with them. The same thing goes for mommy's drink. That's why we can only have it sometimes. Or say something like, sometimes things that feel really good can actually be bad if we have too much of it. Like if you watch TV too long, your eyes start to hurt. These kinds of explanations children can understand at a very young age, and you can transition into more alcohol-related conversations as they get older and their curiosity starts to grow. You can talk to them about things like dopamine and serotonin and how these chemicals can get interrupted if we drink too much, or go on social media too much, or eat too much sugar. It's our responsibility to give them the evidence and to guide their choices. This isn't a one-time conversation either, but an ongoing conversation that you can include other things that are socially acceptable obsessions as well, like our obsession with social media, or our obsession with fitness and fad diets. It's our responsibility as educators to prepare children to make smart decisions. And with an estimated 21.5% of Canadians meeting the criteria for substance use disorder, we are failing. That's 1 in 5 Canadians. We also need a desperate reworking of our mental health care system. Like I mentioned in my last video, addiction is often a misplaced coping mechanism for unresolved trauma. These traumas often occur at a young age, but it would be remiss to not mention the collective generational traumas that we're currently living through right now. A global health pandemic, an uprising for racial justice, political destruction, climate change. There's so much going on right now that causes extreme emotional distress, and these are traumas. It's absolutely imperative to find effective strategies to cope with the psychological stress that comes with living in the 21st century. We may have far less physical labor to experience than our previous generations, but we have exponentially more emotional labor to sift through. If we aren't taught healthy ways of managing that stress, we will never be out of harm's way from addiction. So that's my thoughts on this one. In our culture, we've glamorized and normalized drinking in our society. We shame those who develop addictions, and we shame those who choose not to drink. We have parents who survived by the bottle and an education system that is severely lacking in addressing addiction with its students. My next video is going to be the first one addressing recovery, and we're going to be talking about the 2 paths to recovery: spiritual fellowship versus medical recovery programs. This is where we're going to get into a little bit of the debate of whether or not Alcoholics Anonymous is actually a recovery program. So stay tuned for that. Do all the things like last time. Share this, please, if you know anyone who's going to benefit from it. I don't have social media to share this on, so do me a solid. And I will see you next time. The prevalence of alcohol in our society, mother of luck. Take a drink. Roll out the hands. It's not an attack to suggest that these women are acting out of guilt, shame, and exhaustion. Oh my God, can I take this take?